Welcome. This is the Finance Committee. Um, oh, Randy, you want me to tell you to go ahead and start the stream, right? Not Randy.
Jerry.
Yep.
Jerry, did you start the stream?
Stream started.
Okay, super. Thank you, Jerry. So it's April 4th, 2025 Finance Committee for the Utah State Board of Education. And we're going to open up. We have we do have one public comment that signed up, and that will be Royce Van Tassel, Executive Director of the Utah Association of Public Charter Schools. And Mr. Van Tassel, did you want to make your comment at the beginning of our meeting, or did you want to wait until the action item that you wanted to comment on?
My preference would be to do it at the time of the item, but I'm happy to do it as you see fit.
And you mentioned there's two items, R277-726 and R277-632 that you wanted to comment on, right? And so those are agenda items 1.4 and 1.5. So if you prefer to do that, then we'll wait until
that'd be great. Thank you.
Item 1.4 comes up and allow you to make your comment at that time. But on the agenda, then we do have staff introductions, and we'll start if Matt is ready. We'd love to hear from Matt.
I'm sorry, Vice Chair Kelly.
Yeah.
Before that, the sound from the room is so rattly. It's very hard to hear. You sound very muffled and fishbowly, things like that. I'm not certain if the public is going to catch it all.
Okay. There's this thing in the middle. If I point it towards me, does that help at all?
No.
Hey, Jerry, can you give us some advice on the sound, please, sir?
So to be fair, Superintendent Jones sounded better.
Oh, well, hey.
It's not great. It's not great, but it is better. It's just very muffly and fishbowly.
Sit right there.
That may just be me.
Yeah, I think it's this right here. So that's where they can hear me clear. So
Yeah, towards under that. Board Member Vargas, does that help at all? We kind of relocated to try to move ourselves under where we think the microphones are at.
A little bit. It's a weird thing to describe, but yes, it is a little bit better.
Okay. Well, look at that. I'm drawing all over my hand already this morning. All right. Well, we'll have those staff introductions move forward because I believe that Matt Ferris, are you with us?
Yes, sir, I am. Can you hear me?
Super. So I think you have no microphone issues. You sound great. So Matt Ferris, Senior IT Operations Manager. Tell us about yourself, Matt.
Oh, yes, sir. As you said, I'm the Senior IT Operations Manager. I've been with USBE just over 5 years now. Prior to that, I was active duty Air Force contractor and civil service for almost a total of 30 years and decided to change things up and come down here. So probably one of the best business decisions of my life. It's a fantastic place to work and great people. My team consists of the internal IT help desk, who take care of all the employee computers and things of that nature. Our application help desk, which provides support to all of our LEA customers for like Utrex, Aspire, Cactus, and eventually USIMS very soon. Core services, they take care of our emails, the hosting environment for all of our applications, all the servers. We also have database administrators that take care of the underlying databases for those systems. Have a cybersecurity team that focuses on keeping us protected and making sure we don't make any mistakes. And last but not least, Jerry in the studio. They take care of us for live streams, recordings, all of that stuff. So it's a pretty comprehensive team. Take care of a lot of things, and I think we do a pretty good job considering how many people we have to do it. So, but like I said, a fantastic place to work. And I don't think I'm going anywhere anytime soon.
Well, welcome to education. We're good at stacking them deep and educating them cheap, right? So,
Absolutely.
so thank you, Matt. And,
Thank you.
Yeah. Next on the agenda, first, any board members, board member Bogus, you have any questions or comments for Matt?
I've worked with Matt pretty extensively. He's a great guy. I'm glad to have him.
All right, next on the agenda is financial manager, John Palmer. John, are you with us?
I don't know if he got.
I see him online. Let me see if he's not able to. Hang on, just
Technical difficulties.
No worries.
Oh, there he is.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we got you, John.
Can you hear us, John? John, if you can hear us, raise your tie up.
Yeah,
I can't hear.
for me by getting out of the Zoom and getting back in for some reason. So
Yeah, I wonder if that was.
John will try that.
Okay, we'll come back to John though, but do you want to move to that next side? Yeah,
Yeah.
and then come back when we get John. We're gonna move on to the agenda action item, agenda item 1.2. R277407 school fees. And the staff lead on that is Deputy Superintendent of Policy, Elise Nui. So Elise, if you're on, why don't you go ahead and lead out on this agenda item?
We'll see her on there. Tammy, is Elise on?
she was on. I wonder if she is rebooting too, because I saw her a
Might
moment.
be. Yeah, that might be what's going on because of the audio. They're going back out, trying to come back in. So
John Palmer's back now. If you want to go there.
okay. Do you want to go to John Paul?
Go ahead, John Palmer.
Hi there. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
You
Sorry.
hear us?
I do now. Yeah, I just restarted. So if anyone's listening that has that same issue, the restart worked for me. So
Right.
yeah, thanks for having me here. My name's John Palmer. I work in financial operations here at USBE. I work under Sam Uri, Director Sam Uri. So I work as a financial manager and mainly I have financial reporting and compliance. So my main goal is to get good quality LEA financial information and then report that out to whoever wants to look at it and whoever's there to make decisions with that. To do that, it requires systems and a lot of data. So I work with USIMS and UPEFs to collect that data from LEAs. So that's kind of the main focus for me. I started here in June 2017, so that's approaching 8 years now. And then for the greater state of Utah, I've been employed since 2011, so 14 years. So hold a MBA from the University of Utah. And then I was told to include something interesting. So I guess the main thing for me is I've been blessed and am now a new father to a 6-month-old baby girl. So
Right on.
yeah, happy to answer any questions. But yeah, that's about all I have.
Board Member Bogus or Chair Hymus, you got any questions?
No questions. Excited for you. 6 months.
6 months, yeah.
Is that your first, John?
It is, yeah.
Congratulations. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Changes
thank
things a little bit, doesn't it?
you.
So congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we do now have Deputy Superintendent of Policy, Elise Nui, in the room with us. And are you ready for agenda item 1.2?
I am.
Okay, super. Let's jump right into that. School fees, R277407, and we'll let you take the lead on that.
All right, thank you. Is this a good place to microphone?
Just tell us if you're having any issues hearing Deputy Superintendent Nui.
Okay, I'll try and talk loud and clear. So R277407 is the rule that puts guidelines around school fees. And as probably all of you know, there was a lot of change to school fees during the last legislative session. And so this takes into account actually two different bills that passed during the 2025 session. The first is the school fees bill, but then there was also the UFA bill, which requires LEAs who participate as a provider in UFA to post their fees schedule. And because we don't have a UFA rule, this felt like the closest fit to put those guidelines and requirements into this rule. So a few of the things that you'll see in the rule, we've got some changes, significant changes to definitions starting on line 29. We've taken out most of the references to curricular, co-curricular, extracurricular, and so those have been stricken, and we have added the new definitions from the school fees bill that include common education expense, courses versus B course versus non-B course, discretionary project. It's another one that was added from the legislation. And personal student supplies was another big change to definitions. Okay. We also added two definitions that are related to the UFA bill. So there's scholarship expense and scholarship student are also added in.
Sure. What lines are you looking at?
So this is all the definitions of scholarship expense. Yeah, 125 and 127.
Because I'm curious, I followed that link to 53G7501. And I know that's not our end, but they updated their definitions because they seem to still have a lot of the old definitions of co-curricular and curricular there.
Yes, my understanding is that now that the governor has signed all of this into law, that they are updating their system, I believe tonight and this weekend. And so we should see those definitions soon.
It's the 53F, also that link is not up to date. It takes you to the web, to the code, but you'll notice the date on the code is like May 24.
Yeah.
So
that's where, when the bill was written, that's where it references this will go. And so we kind of put it preemptively into our rule that hopefully it should all line up.
when it does come out to the LEAs after, because we still have to go through the full board, the links will
It'll
be.
work fine. Yeah, and Kieran does a great job of checking those links, so we'll make sure if there's anything before it goes to law. And so there's not a lot of change to the bulk of the rule. If you go down, we changed one conversation that would be good for you all to have is on line 293. This is where the requirement for LEAs to publish and share with USBE their fee schedule. It was April 1st. As you know, last board meeting, the board decided to move that to July due to all the changes. So to give LEAs extra time, but there was some conversation that moving forward after this year is kind of extra time, that moving forward, it would be maybe June 1st. So that's a conversation for you all to have, because that's a policy choice. It doesn't matter to us as staff, whether it's April or June. July would probably be a little too late, but you can all decide.
But this would be then for the May board meeting that we would have this discussion.
Well, you can have it as a committee and then, yeah, as a full
Okay,
board.
but as a full board, this wouldn't go out to the LEAs until
Yeah, so this would
that
be
full
for,
board meeting in May, right?
yes.
Okay, so that would give them, the LEAs, a month's time if we went with June 1st instead of July 1st.
So what we could say here, because we have told LEAs that it's July,
Okay,
what we could say is that beginning in the 25-26 school year, the due date would be June 1st.
okay.
Didn't we just vote for this year to move it to July?
Yeah.
And then this would be, do we need to specify the date, or would this come out?
It's gonna come out probably the very end of June, depending on when it becomes law. And so,
So we need to say something to the effect of on or before date
Yeah.
of beginning year. Is that what we're saying? Beginning year 2026.
yeah, we could do that just in case there's a crossover. We could also, if it's okay with all of you, push back the date that we send it to OAR, and then that would give us 2 extra weeks, so then it would publish the second week of July. So there's a couple of options for how we handle that.
I would prefer that, because sometimes dates, years get in the way. We just did this yesterday and during the board meeting. Remember, we had to do an amendment to change whatever, 2016 to 2024.
Right.
So I would prefer just holding off. I don't know your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think that's fine with me.
Christina?
Is holding off going to limit our LEDA's ability to come into compliance with this for the next school year?
The other stuff.
So they would have access to the rule. It would have passed through board. And so it would not have the force of law, but I think it would give LEAs plenty of information to plan for what it will look like, right? And they can start planning for that. There is a risk that there is public comments at the OAR stage. They put it out. Sorry, the Office of Administrative Rules. So we have an extra long rule writing process compared to other agencies. Other agencies typically write their rule, then send it to the Office of Administrative Rules. They have a public comment period. If it makes it through that without too much comment, then it becomes law. We have the additional steps of committee. You all look at it for about 30 days. Then we have board meeting 30 days later, and then we have the OAR process. So that makes our rule writing process about 90 days, in which LEAs can see what the rule will most likely look like, but it doesn't have the force of law until it gets to the end of that 90 days. So that's the only risk that we run, is if there is some sort of public comment during that last 30-day stage, then there could be changes, right? But we rarely ever see that. And so I think we're pretty safe.
That would be true. That would be true regardless if we put beginning 2026, anyway, right?
Yeah.
So that's a risk that would be irregardless of if we keep that date on or put that date on or keep it off.
Yeah.
So we voted for July for this school year,
Yes.
but moving forward, we're recommending June 1st for future school years, or is
Yes.
that not a decision we have to make yet?
This conversation happens here, then we'll take it to the full board. Remember last time we discussed this, there was because the original date was April, right?
Yeah.
And some of the BAs and LEAs were saying it's a little early, it's doable, we've been doing it for years. And then they went to July, so we're trying to find a sweet spot. I talked to some BAs, they said June 1st would be great. I'm sure there's more thoughts out there that we'll get in front of the board, but I'm supportive of June 1st. I'm also supportive of May 1st. that would be, first and second choice, but July 1st, we've decided is way too late. For parents who want to know and LEAs who are preparing. We did it this year because of the law change. We want to give some flexibility and then moving forward.
But in this draft, we have June right now.
That's just what I put as a placeholder.
Right. So, okay.
The other changes. So we do have a date on line 345. So starting with the 26-27 school year, and this is because that reflects what was in the law. The LEAs need to identify all of their fees clearly in their registration materials. So that doesn't go into effect this next school year, but the year after that. Same with the pathway to graduation that does not require fees or fee waivers. That also does not go into effect until 26-27 according to the new law. So you'll see that starting on line 379, that language.
Can you, Chair, is it okay if I interrupt?
Yeah, please.
Can you, I have a question on 378 and all that new. Can you break that down for me? What does that mean?
Yeah. Okay, so beginning with the 26-27 school year, each LEA that awards credit toward graduation shall ensure that each school provides at least one option for graduation requirement that fulfills the graduation requirement and does not require the payment or waiver of any fee.
Right, so they're saying you have to have just to make sure I understand, each high school or even a junior high that has 9, 7, 8, and 9, they have a high school credit, they have to offer everything that would be required of 9th grade by the USBE for their credit. So I'm thinking of these smaller schools or even a charter school. We get waivers all the time for some of our charter schools, not all the time, but sometimes of saying, hey, I want to waive this. What does this do? They can still get a waiver, even though this rule says you have to have these. I'm wondering what this does to our LEAs here.
Go ahead. No, my understanding is that they're saying a student needs to be able to go from 9th grade to 12th grade, taking all of the graduation requirements without having to pay fees.
Okay.
So financial literacy is a graduation requirement, right? There has to be an option for the student to be able to take that credit with no fee.
Right, okay.
You need this many credits of math, so you need to be able to take these math courses with no fees. So I can make it through from 9th grade to 12th grade, taking all of the graduation requirements the state is asking me to complete without paying a fee.
So we're not requiring, and that's what I'm just making sure. We're not requiring schools to say, now you have to start picking up these additional courses, which maybe you didn't offer.
Shouldn't be in that, no.
Oh.
Well, I'm not calling on you, Russ. I'm not the chair of this meeting.
So, yeah, no, it would be if, and it may be you're making choices, a school may be forced to make a choice. Okay, let's look at our science credits. And in this science class, we're not going to charge a fee, but this science class, we do charge a fee, but that allows them to meet the graduation requirements without.
This is new language, not new to our LEAs, our charters. They're going to have, and I keep mentioning charters. I know you have some thoughts on this if you want to call them, but again,
I would like to. I can't.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that, and it sounds like it's not requiring LEAs. I don't want to see a school have to do a complete shift. Right. Of requirements.
Louis, if you have a public comment, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Two questions about line 372. We're talking about each LEA that awards credit shall ensure that each school has at least one option. And we can see that the LEA is bigger than the school, and the school itself may not even have a graduation credit. So it seems a little odd that we are saying that school has to provide an option. You know, if it's an elementary school, for example, they're part of the LEA, but they don't award that credit. So that's one question. The other one, this is line 383. A couple of our early college high schools noted that they offer more than one of the following. The question was, did that fit the AP, IB, and concurrent enrollment? I know, for example, that UCAS or New Ames have 2 courses. And the question was, would it be appropriate? I don't think this substantively changes what the legislation is trying to accomplish, but could we strike the words "one of" so that it says that only offers the following for a given graduation requirement?
Notwithstanding subsection in charter school only offers one other.
In some schools, for example, that have 2 chemistry courses through either AP or IB or concurrent, but not just one.
One of to what?
You just strike "one of" that only offers the following.
That only offers the following. Okay. I don't see that. Would that need to be a motion or tell me, Elise?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll move that we strike on lines 383, one of.
So Vice Chair Kelly,
Go ahead, Member Bogus.
I think that we're getting into territory there that may really fly in the face of legislative intent. It was very clear during those discussions at the Capitol that they wanted kids to be able to have a K-12 education without paying fees, especially for requirements. And I'm wondering, in a case like this, I understand what Mr. Van Tassel is saying. I'm wondering, in a case like this, it might be dealt with enrollment, since we're dealing with a choice school anyway. It's not a boundary school. People make an overt decision to attend there. Maybe that's something that can be dealt with at registration instead of here. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Member Bogus, I'm gonna let Mr. Van Tassel have a chance to respond to that. Is that okay?
I think it's against the rules, but it's fine with me.
Member Bogus, I appreciate your feedback. I had the conversation with Representative Strong about this piece of that there is a corollary in the bill for what is in lines 383 through 389. It was designed to recognize that those early college high schools in many cases only offer 4 graduation credits with AP, IB, and concurrent enrollment. So based on the conversation that I had and his recognition of that, he amended his bill to have this language, and I don't recall the specific lines in the bill, but this does have an explicit corollary in Representative Strong's bill.
Awesome, sir. Thank you.
So, Vice Chair.
Yeah, please.
So we're looking at 383, we're saying notwithstanding subsection 10A, and this is the motion that's before us here, a charter school that only offers the following for a given graduation requirement is not required to provide an option that's not require the payment. So if I have a high school that for their requirements, they have concurrent enrollment and AP, but they don't have IB courses, that's okay. Whereas before it was only one of those. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay. That makes sense to me, but
Does the motion have to be seconded? Yes, no,
committee.
okay. All right, so,
Sorry, Alicia's looking at the screen funny.
yeah.
Would it be,
Yeah, go ahead.
I apologize
No,
here.
please.
Would it be?
I'm not very formal. I don't know if you know this.
It is my job to be formal.
I recognize that, so.
I'm just wondering if whoever is screen sharing could bring up HB 344. Cami, I put it in your Teams.
I also got it in the chat.
Oh, perfect. Because on lines 209, it specifically says that the subsection prior, so subsection 2A does not apply to a charter school that only offers one of the following for a given graduation requirement. So we took that fairly like cut and paste from the bill, and it does worry me a little bit that we are then, as board member Bogus pointed out, it may run afoul of the language of the bill. So if you see, it's line 209
Oh, in the bill.
in the bill itself that we're coming from. That's my only worry.
That's a good point.
How would you recommend, Vice Chairman? How would you recommend we?
So this is direct language from
From the bill itself.
from the bill.
Yeah.
So we really don't have the authority to make that. I mean, we can make the motion. Sure, I can go up to admin rules.
Should we, again, I mean, if we move this forward as currently constituted, we could come back to this in the full board meeting and look at lines 383 and make a motion then.
We could, I would, seeing there's only three of us, that only takes one to mess this up, but
Sure.
I would vote against the motion, seeing this language. I'm glad this was brought up.
Yes.
I would vote against the motion, which only one of us, it would only take one to fail.
Right, and I assume that board member Bogus would vote against it as well, right? So.
Don't assume anything about board member Bogus. She is very unpredictable.
Yeah, I will concede there. Yeah. But,
So you can,
I can withdraw that motion then, and, we can have that discussion with the full board, and maybe look at if we find that is in conflict. So,
well, if it does throw a wrench into things too much, and it doesn't sound like Representative Strong is wanting to make things more difficult.
sure.
If, I think we follow the law, if we want the law to change, then we have to go to some lawmakers and say, hey, this creates some complications. I don't know if they will, again, addressing the public here. Rose, I don't know if you're foreseeing any issues. I hope not. I don't think that was the intent of Representative Strong, but if it does, we'll definitely want to address it. For sure. So.
To his other point though, I did draft a potential motion if anyone wants to take that up. With the school versus the LEA to make that more clear. Motion doc if someone wants to.
Where's the potential motion at?
Go back to the motion doc. There we go.
I'm gonna let Matt do that because he's closer and I can't, I'm not gonna be able to see that well.
Are we back to lines 380 something?
379.
370. Okay. That words credit toward graduation. I'll remove that.
So just flip flopping it so that the LEA will ensure that each school that awards credit toward graduation
Okay.
fulfills the requirement. That does make more sense.
I actually prefer that. So yeah, I'll move that the committee amend R277-407 draft 1 line 379 to read as follows. 10A, beginning with the 2026-2027 school year, each LEA shall ensure that each school that awards credit toward graduation provides at least one option for each graduation requirement. That I just, the reason I got hung up was, I don't know if they're gonna assume that the school is within its LEA. We shall ensure that each school within that LEA, you know what I mean? I don't know if that would offer clarity or if people are gonna know what that means anyway. I doubt that the Granite School District is gonna go to Jordan and fix their schools, so.
Board Member Bogus, do you have any objection to this motion? I'm assuming nothing here.
So. Yeah. I'm good with that motion. Once we have Member Bogus back, let's
Do we have to do, yeah, okay.
And so, I don't think I had any other questions on the rule, Vice Chair.
Okay. Member Bogus, are you with us yet? She's trying to text her.
As you look at that, one of the things that I've been trying to do for 4 years with this rule, and I know this isn't going to be popular, I appreciated the fact that schools could charge for tardies.
Yeah.
How do I get that back?
Put it in a rule.
I've stared at this rule for months, Scott. I know you guys have done it for years, but I don't even know how to put it in or where it came from. And I'm not going to put you on public record here.
Yeah.
I'll do this privately, but
Yeah.
I'll say it publicly.
Okay.
I think there needs to be teeth. I've seen the results. My father taught at Taylorsville. He's still, to this day, he's retired since. Matthew, he calls me Matthew. There's gotta be teeth to tardies. These halls are full of kids. It wasn't like this. Well, I don't know if that was the removal of the fee or if that's just kids nowadays, you know.
I could look at that in between now and full board.
Well, part of it may be tying grades to tardies. So Vice Chair, I know, right? That's the teeth, right? That's part of the teeth. So, because you could have a financial incentive or a financial penalty or an academic penalty or, consequence. So
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, I mean, so there are, my understanding though, sirs, and I think it's decided at the local level, there are LEAs that do fine for tardies.
You can, but you can have a fee waiver. You can.
For the tardies
or tardies.
Well, yeah, we can, through you, Vice Chair, we can, set it up to when, to it, if you want the topic in there to be talked about, I mean, subject to Board Member Bogus, you don't have a quorum, so I don't,
I would wait on, there's no.
You're not a suggestion right now.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, I've been thinking, we don't have a quorum, I don't even know what this meeting is right now. I'm just saying, this has been on my mind for like 4 years of saying, man. And I get it, my kids are tardy all the time.
So everything else we need to get off our chest.
So if I may, Vice Chair, just another, I'm glad that I have such awesome links to the field during these meetings. So I've been advised that fines are not subject to fee waivers. So
you can fine.
So if you put a kid in the parking lot, that doesn't necessarily, the fee waiver doesn't cover that.
If you would.
Put a boot on their car.
Yeah. Not the kid, the car.
Well, yeah.
So
interesting. I'll just have to look more into it then and see how that looks.
Board Member Bogus, do we have you back yet? I texted her, she said she's coming back, so.
Okay. Was there anything else? At least I kind of interrupted as you were going through all the changes. I didn't see any new stuff.
The only thing I would bring to your attention is lines 396 through 409. That's the UFA requirement, and that one was tricky. I don't know if you have some language you would like to make more clear.
No, I mean, I did, Vice Chair, I did review this and I think it's meets the intent of the legislation, which was in HB 455, that the board can write a rule for this just particular portion of the Utah Fits All Scholarship Program, which is the fee structure. So I believe it's pretty straightforward and, you know, allows for the opportunity to address concerns about different fees being charged or costs. Because, you know, we want to make sure that there's a relation between how much is being charged and how much the costs of the courses are, or, you know, choice, right? And so there did seem to be some pretty serious anomalies between, well, you know, here they charge X amount for this course, a similar course, or the same courses over here, why are they charging more for that then? You know, this allows for some structure. That's basically what it is, I think. So for whatever that's worth.
Chair Hymas, do you see any changes in those lines?
Deputy knew he has.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. We have received some feedback, so we present all of the rules to our superintendents and in-house counsel for districts. And one of the pieces of feedback that we got would be a recommendation to strike the transparent and fair qualifiers on line 398. The feeling was that the requirements within the rule all are to make it transparent and fair, and so that's just unnecessary and could lead to confusion. So that was one suggestion that we had from the field.
Vice Chair, can you hear me?
Got you, yeah.
Yeah, so, thank you. You know, it seems to be one of those days. I like qualifiers because I think for me, it adds clarity, and that is, you know, obviously I missed a little bit of the conversation, but as I jumped back in, that, believe it or not, is that one of the number one complaints that I get as a board member in my district. It relates to one institution in particular, but the words transparent. And if you look at the way that this has gone about, I would argue that it's not transparent. So if we don't actually write it down, then they can claim it wasn't there. And so just putting that out there, because I think sometimes our LEAs are quick to claim things and they forget that the public at large, they don't have EduSpeak, they don't speak EduSpeak, they don't sign up for every alert known to man. But that purposeful transparency is so important. And maybe that's the language, purposefully transparent. There's a difference between putting it on a web page and sending it to tech and it quietly goes live, and purposeful transparency in different areas. So I don't know what that looks like, but I'll throw it out to the group for discussion.
Board Member Bogus, I'm curious about the word fair, though. I agree with I agree with you on the transparent part, but the fair isn't what is being outlined here. Creating a fair fee structure, so establish a transparent fee structure for those expenses and eliminate the and fair.
Well, I think fair would be, and I would have to look really close at the screen again. I'm sorry. So it says, and I might direct a question to Superintendent Jones. Superintendent Jones, I don't know if you recall a conversation we had a while back. It was later something we followed up on about the use of facilities, and that falls under the fee structure. And I do believe that the public at large is arguing that those fee structures are not only exorbitant, they are grossly unfair. If I could may perhaps put words into synthesis that result from a 2-hour conversation. Um, and so could you help me understand, Superintendent Jones, if that would come under this? Because if it does, I would argue we need those words.
Mr. Chair, the answer to Board Member Bogus's question is no, we don't anticipate that this particular example, that you're right, we have discussed in the past, would be affected or come into being within this aspect because it is strictly to the UFA scholarship fee structure. So we're not aware of any facility type. Yeah. But in the overall rule, yes. But for this particular portion, this relates strictly to the legislation requiring a framework be set and the address of the specific to the UFA program. Does that help answer Board Member Bogus's question, sir?
Yes, thank you. Board Member Bogus, does that satisfy your question?
I have to laugh at you for answering for me, Vice Chair Kelly. It does, and I'm thankful because as my device was going in and out, clearly you guys moved past what we were on. My question would be, when it comes to the word fair in this context, would go back to that word exorbitant. We have individuals claiming that, I can take a class here for this much money, I can take a class here for this much money, but if I go just to my neighborhood school to take it, it costs 6 times as much. I'm throwing that out there for conversation. What are our thoughts about it when we're looking at a neighborhood school charging 3 or 4 times as much than it would cost elsewhere? Is that fair? And so I'm just wondering, what are our...
I'm going to defer to Superintendent Newey for that.
So I think the initial comment that we don't need the transparent and fair based from the field was because on lines 403 through 409, it outlines the requirements for that fee schedule. So one, it has to be based on the actual cost of providing services. So there has to be proof or the ability to defend that that's the actual cost and be consistent with fees charged to enroll students of the same services who are in the regular school program. And so those 2 factors, the field thought that those made it fair in and of themselves, that if it was based on the actual cost and was the same across the board, whether you're UFA or at least consistent from a UFA student to a public school student, that that would be considered fair. Does that answer your question?
I believe so. How does this work? And maybe it doesn't, but how does it work as it goes through the bureaucracy of the UFA process? Is this something where a client, if you will, is going to be charged more because there's some, dare I say, hidden fee in the bureaucratic process, or is this just apples to apples and they're all red?
Yeah, please. Joe, do you want to? Okay, Vice Chair, my estimate of this is that no, that would not occur. I mean, this is the first, would be the first iteration or implementation of the rule. I don't see risk of that occurring because this is the intent, is to make a very transparent fee structure where everyone else can see what everyone else is doing and charging for particular services to our UFA participants. So, I don't think so, but we'd have to wait and see if this goes into effect, if the board does it. Does that help answer the question, or?
Well, I would say absolutely. And as you spoke, I'm so sorry, Vice Chair Kelly, it brought up another question. Does this prohibit our kids from just going to their neighborhood school? And I mean, if they want to drive 15 miles, I see the difference in that as a UFA student. But if they're open enrolling or optioning in for chemistry or choir, are they really required to pay a fee at their neighborhood school?
For UFA
Very
students,
UFA student.
For UFA students,
yeah.
potentially, yes.
I'd say potentially, they're saying potentially, yes, yeah.
So help me
So-
understand that word potentially. Does that mean if an LEA wants to be goobery, we'll use that word, then they might charge a fee, and maybe an LEA in another part of our state might say, hey, you're within our boundaries. I'm going for the word consistent.
Well, I think I see what she's
Will
saying.
you provide a definition of goobery first?
Well, it's so technical. I just know, and as all board members know, a lot of times what we deal with the most is walk with me through this and complaints, lots of complaints. And so it seems like sometimes, whether it's purposeful or not, our LEAs or their agents can become real sticklers and even discriminate against different places and spaces as we define students. And just a story that might help illustrate the point. It was a charter school, not in my district, just for clarity. So that leaves it open to 14 others, so somebody can figure out who it was. That disallowed a student from taking classes at their charter school because they were a UFA student. And we had to walk through that, and eventually it was resolved. But that kind of behavior, that's not a misunderstanding. That's a gross misapplication of the law. And so that, if I could just state that story and say one example of possible gooberiness. Totally professional. Thanks for that.
Yeah,
Board Member
Makes it very clear now. Thank you.
So, maybe I misunderstand UFA. Now, I know we have a full agenda. I don't want to spend all day on this, but if you're a UFA participant, then you're not part of that public school.
You're not.
So of course the charter could say, well, if you want to, if you're not part of that, like my school doesn't offer those classes, don't you have to sign up for that?
Yes.
So if I don't offer it and they say, I'm going UFA, but I want to come to your school, I say, no. Right? You're welcome to come to my school, but you have to choose, right?
Yes, Vice Chair, they have to choose. Well, so now we're getting into the realm of UFA providers, right? There are LEAs that are UFA providers.
And if that charter school that Member Boggs mentioned wasn't.
So if this is like an access question, where the charter school, as an example, turn the student away, well, if they aren't a UFA provider, it doesn't mean they have to take that student, because that student is a UFA scholarship student, and by definition is considered a private or homeschool student, I don't know which, and the condition of the scholarship is not to be enrolled in a public school, charter or district. So but then if a charter becomes a UFA provider, they have to put it in their basic, just real quick, in their SIS, they have to be able to separate their UFA students from public school students. And so then
It's rural or district.
charter or district,
Right?
yeah.
Any public school.
Correct.
And so I guess this leads me to this question. So I think that resolves what we just heard, but that leads me to this question. You talk about this fairness, is it going to cost more? Well, yeah, it's going to cost differently depending on the school because of their resources. But can they go, if I'm a UFA scholarship awardee or recipient, do I get to go to a UFA provider, the school that's a UFA provider, or whatever, and say, well, I want to take your science class for free? I don't think so. You're UFA, you have to pay for that. That's what the money's for, right?
Right, and Vice Chair, they would set the fee structure to address Chair Hymas's question. this is, the intent of this is to establish a framework where it's very transparent and clear to a parent that, okay, you know, I have choice, so you're a UFA provider, I can choose you. What is it gonna cost me to take that science class? Or
Is their budget, how they want to spend their
and
scholarship.
then there's, you know, because they're just, I'm not aware, I don't have any evidence of this, but anecdotally, it was that, well, it seems that perhaps some LEAs are charging more fees to a UFA student because they're not, quote unquote, getting the WPU. And so then it's more costly, or, you know, we really have to really unpack this more. So I'm not taking a position or saying that, but this is intended to try to provide more definitive and, you know, transparent, if you will, guardrails on, you know, well, okay, I don't think anybody's against the charging of the fees, all things considered, but there did seem to be some evidence of, well, why is the fee so exorbitantly high for this particular class, which is similar here, and it's minimal here. Then you get into the whole, well, this school charges tuition. This is a school that provides homeschool. So they don't charge tuition, but they charge these fees for it. And there just seemed to be a lot of discrepancies or differences. Nobody's fault. I'm not like saying, oh, people are trying to do it. I just think that this allows for, it doesn't say you shall, well, it says you shall, but it doesn't say, you know, we're providing the 5 W's. The how is still left up to the LEAs, right? It's still, the decision making is still left up to them, but they're just trying to see where the, you know.
But this verbiage here in the 400s says, however you decide to do that, you have to be transparent.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So
And follow the, if I may, Vice Chair, follow the same thing you do for when you set your fees.
Yes.
If you're a UFA provider, you do this type of fees. If, you know, or if you, you know, there's some examples of, without getting into all the policy technical sides of the UFA, it's just really designed to be along the same lines as what school fees are.
So
There's
this
other public students, you
This
know, so.
rule is designed to address some of the concerns that Member Bogus has shared.
Yes, yeah, that's fair.
And that's what this language is doing.
Although, if I may, Vice Chair, I would say that the, you know, circumstances dictate, right? I mean, it's really hard to say, well, it will mean this in this instance. What it will mean, though, is that what we intend it to mean is that it will provide some structure and transparency of, well, you know, what are local entities that, for example, are UFA providers charging here versus over here to promote access to programs, you know, and things by those that declare themselves to be UFA providers. And, you know, it's not, we're not trying to say, well, everybody has to charge the same.
Right.
We're just trying to say, okay, here's a framework now, you know, let us see that. So I hope that makes sense. Yeah, this is uncharted territory. I mean, UFA is a new program, you know, so. Either.
Well, Thomas, what is your attitude in terms of striking fair versus keeping and fair there? I think transparent needs to stay there.
It's, whenever you get something like fair, I really am indifferent to it, because what does it mean? You know, I can define it, you can define it, you know, it's one of those terms. I think if I'm reading this, its purpose to me is saying, no, you have to look at others and be comparable. But so I don't have a problem with it staying in there.
Okay.
I will, yeah, I don't have a problem with this section, and I appreciate the conversation. I do want to remind Vice Chair Kelly that I did put a motion on the floor here, and before we get, remember, August is now with us, and so I wonder if we could address that.
Yeah. Do you mind restating that?
August, are you with us?
I believe so.
Good. Just want to make sure that, because there's only 3 of us, Randy's.
We don't want to assume anything.
Yeah. So, okay, so I move that the committee amend R277-7 draft 1, line 379 to read as follows. 10A, beginning with the 2026-2027 school year, each LEA shall ensure that each school within the LEA that awards credit toward graduation provides at least one option for each graduation requirement that.
Are you asking me to vote?
I'm waiting for Vice Chair Kelly. That's all.
Yeah, let's vote. So,
Aye.
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 So that motion passes. And Deputy Superintendent Newey, is there any other items here that you want to bring to our attention?
No, I think that was all the changes that are in this rule.
Okay, so the recommended action, and I'll make this motion, is that the committee approve R277407 school fees draft 1 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading
As amended.
as amended. And with no further comments, let's go ahead and vote on that.
So
right.
I'm sorry, I was trying to wait for a lull in the conversation. I'm
Okay,
really not
so-
comfortable with the words approve, but if you're willing to just say we're forwarding this to the board, I'm not comfortable voting to approve it. I am comfortable sending it to the board. I know you need my vote to do that, otherwise I would just vote against it. But I
I'll
know
change
you-
my vote. Yeah, the committee move to the full board R277407 school fees draft 1 on first reading. And we are forwarding that to the board for approval on second and final reading, right? Or do I need to take out that final approval there again?
Nope, I'm happy to support that. I can vote for that.
Okay. All right, let's vote.
Aye.
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 That moves us to our next action, our next agenda item, which is 1.3, R277725 statewide online education program contractor requirements. And Director of Law and Professional Practices, Ben Rasmussen. Are you with us, Ben?
I am, Vice Chair Kelly. How are you today?
Great, thank you. Thanks for joining us. We'll let you take the lead on this.
Okay, with 725, this is a pretty easy one, potentially. So this is one where the legislature has.
Don't assume anything with Board Member Bogus.
Well, that all the procedural posture is simple. There may be questions on it. The legislature has changed up the requirements for the contractor in the SOAP such that our rule is no longer appropriate. The bill that was passed in the legislative session, SB 137, specifically outlines how the contractor will be managed and has language that the board should manage the contractor without rule. And so the staff is recommending simply that the board repeal R277725. Happy to answer questions that you have about this. We also have Quinn Kellis and Corey Conth, who administer the SOEP program.
Board Member Bogus, do you have any questions for Mr. Rasmussen?
I don't believe so. Ben, I'm looking at this and I'm wondering, is this the one that Member Davis did so much work on?
I can't recall.
It's the other one. I think the contractor one.
Go ahead.
Well, that I have no questions. I appreciate that differentiation. Thank you, Superintendent Jones.
Yeah, did you hear it, ma'am? Yeah.
Yes, I did. That was the other one that was related to contractors specifically.
Okay, yeah, that's
So we have two contractor rules, if I'm understanding correctly.
No, sir. Yeah, go ahead, Ben. Sorry.
I was just saying we don't have two contractor rules. This would be the contractor rule that covers private school students. But the legislature has kind of shifted this and basically directed us to phase this rule out.
Okay,
I'll make a motion if it's in order.
Please, yes.
Well, they'll get it first, okay. I move that the committee repeal R277-725 statewide online education program contractor requirements on first reading and recommends the board repeal the rule on second and final reading.
All right. With no further comment. Do you have a comment, Board Member Vargas?
oh no, I thought you were voting. Somebody said aye.
Yeah, aye. So, and that passes unanimously. And we'll move to our next agenda item, and we did have public comment on this agenda item, R277-726 statewide online education program. And Mr. Van Tassel, we'll give you some time to make your comment.
Thank you, appreciate it. I want to thank your staff. They've been very good to work with some questions here. There are 6 providers in the SOEP program. 2 of those are charter schools. And so I asked them sort of on the ground, what do the proposed amendments look like and how does it affect them? We're able to work through most of the questions that they raised, but on lines 626 to 628, you have a requirement for some potentially sensitive materials. I don't know what the right word there to use is. It's not sensitive in the way we define it in code, but it is sort of an age-appropriate question. And it appears that this requirement here to say that there are some age-appropriate questions applies only to SOEP providers and not to all LEAs. All LEAs certainly could be teaching the exact same course. And it is at least surprising that we're saying only the SOEP providers need to provide this notice. So there was some concern there that says, why are we asking for SOEP purposes for this age-appropriate notice when we don't do that for all LEAs?
May I?
Yes, please.
So perhaps one of our staff members has a better answer, but does it have something to do with the mechanism online? Because I think there's a good point there. I'd love to have that disclaimer on lots of stuff that comes through my inbox, but the question still remains, does it have something to do with the mechanism with regard to the online portal?
Kellis might be able to answer.
So that
Quinn.
Quinn Kellis,
You.
Quinn, do you would you like to comment on that?
Good morning. My name is Quinn Kellis. I am the School Leadership Development Coordinator and Lead Administrator for the SOEP program. And I appreciate Mr. Van Tassel's conversations about this yesterday. And yes, as we did look through the language here, I believe he's correct that we couldn't find any other rule where this applies to any LEAs or schools outside of the SOEP program. Some of this is based on previous board discussion around sensitive materials, and particularly when we're looking at concurrent enrollment, where school students would have access to college level material. And this just provides the parents a notice that some of that material should be looked at carefully by the parents. So because we offer concurrent enrollment through SOEP, we added this in the proposed language. We also understand that we have, based on previous, actually fairly recent board rule change that allows middle school students to earn high school credit. So we could have potentially sixth graders taking any level of high school coursework. And again, we just, for the information for the parents, that they look closely at the curriculum or the syllabus for a course, and that they're aware of the content that their students would be exposed to.
Thank you. Board
So
Member
Vice Chair
Boggs?
Kelly, I have
Yeah.
a secondary question.
Yes, please.
I really appreciate Director Kellis Quinn and his explanation there, because I think in that situation it's important to have this there. And I lost my train of thought right after I said that. I'll come back to it, sir. I apologize.
No worries. Member Boggs, let me direct a question at you if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, let's remove this from this document, are there other places where it may need to be added to create that consistency?
I think based on the communications that I receive and have entertained in my time as a board member, I think it could be something that should be in course catalogs in high schools and other spaces. But that's a policy decision for the board. But having it here, I think it's good, especially considering that we have access to extremely mature content at very young ages. Oh, I said the words, which prompts the question: have we defined, quote, mature content?
That's not defined in this rule, Chair.
So if I heard Director Rasmussen correctly, he said it's not in this rule. Would that mean that mature subject matter is defined in another rule, perhaps 100?
It's not defined in R277-100, I don't believe. Corey, I think Corey Conth may have a comment to make, Chair.
Yeah, please, Corey.
You're on mute, Corey.
Is it okay if I speak to this, Chair?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yes?
Yes, please.
Am I frozen now?
Corey,
Can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry. I think I'm being frozen at times. This was the request of a board member long ago, and she singled out certain classes that our providers agree include mature content. So those would be sometimes unexpected classes: health 2, financial literacy, and we used to have adult roles and responsibilities. I think there's one other course. So it's just a number of courses that the providers have let us know that, yes, there is adult content in those courses.
Kind of adult content is housing and financial literacy.
I'm racking my brain right now trying to think that financial literacy. I do think that I think financial literacy, the state legislature has encouraged that be taken their junior or senior year of high school. And so that may be why that was included there, is that, hey, we it's a class that we're looking at trying to prepare people for dealing with their personal finances. And so a sixth grader taking that course maybe is not age appropriate.
So,
If I recall correctly, Vice Chair Kelly, there was an instance where it was a financial literacy class, but there were some interesting things infused into that class under the guise of inclusion, and some of them went way too far, I think, is where that assertion came from.
But that would be covered under 217, I believe, or our educator ethics.
It might be, but when you're dealing with an online portal as opposed to an educator, you have to have an educator accountable. I don't know, we're getting into weedy territory here. I think if we go back to the rule at hand, Vice Chair Kelly, I like
Yeah.
this in here. I think it's important and it keeps us from getting into the weeds. Just my thoughts.
I think that I'm in agreement with that, and since there's three of us, it doesn't matter what you think at this point, Chair.
I control it. No, I agree as well. I think that was kind of my point, is that, yeah, we want to, I'm happy with where this goes. I think there are other rules that we have in place and other protections as well. I'm fine with this looking forward.
Director Rasmussen, do you have any other information you think is necessary to bring before the committee at this time before we take action?
No, we're happy to answer any questions you have. It is a big, it's probably one of the longest rules we have, but we're happy to answer any questions you have. There were a lot of changes made during the legislative session that this tries to incorporate.
Yeah, well, Mr. Van Tassel mentioned line 600, and I'm like 600. Wow,
That's just halfway through.
You have to scroll down a ways there, yeah. So
can Vice Chair, may I?
Yeah, please.
Ben, can you go down to, like, there's additions here in the 770s. We just make sure we cover what's being added here. Just all the little changes that we're gonna see in this rule.
Can I would probably ask Corey Cons to speak to this, what the intent was here.
Yes, please, Corey.
Because my sound is going in and out, just reiterate the question, please.
So Corey, on line 770 through about 776, there's new language on data systems. Can you talk about the reason for that?
Yes. We set up an accountability standard based on UTREX, and we're finding that SEATS is the system of record for enrolling students and reporting enrollment over time, tracking those students, and providing financial distributions. And we found that the SEATS data, which is the real record of student participation, often does not match that UTREX record. So we're just saying parity should be maintained between systems over time. For instance, if you had 1,000 or 2,000 enrollments in SEATS and 100 reported to UTREX, there's a problem there.
Yeah. Thank you, Vice Chair. One more. Can you also, Corey, if you're willing, cover section 9? Looks like it has a substantial overhaul, and that begins on line 893.
This is the funding for schools with small populations.
High schools.
Can you speak about that, Corey?
Yes. Senate Bill 137 set out some criteria for prioritizing funding for our small schools to better direct the existing limited appropriation to those schools that had the most difficult time providing courses for enumerated reasons. And those enumerated reasons were, let's see. Oh, I don't have that up. Okay, so the enumerated reasons are pretty much what I have defined here on lines 902 to 904. Wait. Okay, so geographic isolation, other things like this. And so we have worked with our school finance team, looked into the data that we have to develop a framework which effectively targets schools on the basis of those criteria set forth in statute to tier that funding towards the schools that are most in need to provide those college and career ready courses.
Yeah, by 1:30.
Yes, thank you. Thank you much.
Chair Imus, yeah. All right, are there any other questions or comments from board members? All right, the recommended action, and I will move that the committee, should we approve this, board member?
When you speak back to me, I can't hear what you say.
Corey, he's talking to
in
board
real
member
time.
Bog.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and I appreciate that clarification because it is still muddled enough that I didn't catch that. I apologize.
No worries. Would you?
What was your question? I thought you were addressing it to someone else.
No, should we, are you okay with the language of approving this or moving to the full board?
I'm fine to approve. Thank you, sir.
All right, then I'm going to recommend the action is that the committee approves R277726 statewide online education program, draft 1 on first reading, and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. And board members, go ahead and vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that passes unanimously. All right, we will move to agenda item 1.5. Again, we have public comment on this R277632, funding for at-risk students and students learning English. So Mr. Van Tassel, again, I'll yield some time to you.
Thank you, appreciate that. This is really just about the word or versus and. I think I emailed you questions about this, but the code that this is drawn from says that lines 42 and 43 in the code will be an or, and what we have there on line 44, you'll see is an and, which means that there is no or between lines 42 and 43. So the code says that you have to provide all of these things. And what's the information that's on line 42 and 43, it says you can pick either
44 and 45, Royce.
45. Okay, thank you. But the rule as drafted says, nope, you're going to provide all of it. And so there's a discrepancy there. I prefer fewer reports to more reports, which is why I raised the question.
Yes, Superintendent.
So I'm the and. You know, I like to do stuff like that. So the and part of it though, so here's the thing, I'm not saying that we should do that or the thing, what I was trying to get clarified with Ben, you know, through the vice chair, all I was saying is that it wouldn't be against the law if the board put and in there. Because part of the consideration of the ands and requiring it all is related to is the funding making a difference? We've, you know, gone the road of ROI and, you know, those types of things, right? So there was some consideration that by requiring it all, yes, it would absolutely, it would increase reporting, you know, absolutely. But that's why the rule is back here, is because the discovery was that the law requires reporting. It does say or. You know, I believe Tanya is online and, you know, from a program perspective could speak to this. I'm not saying we should, or I just, you know, all I'm saying is that we could consider doing that, because my understanding of the law is the board can, as long as you're meeting the law, you can add on additional requirements to it by your rule, right? So that's all. I mean, it's not, you know, I'm not gonna die on the vine or something if you don't say and, but that it was me that questioned the or and that's where this perspective is coming from. I don't disagree with Royce. I'm just saying, I think that was just a consideration is all, and something that to it. And if Tanya's willing, I think you should hear from her. And yeah, please, you know, if she wants. Sorry, Tanya, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
You're fine, Deputy Super. Tanya, am I able to talk? Sorry, Chair.
Yes, please.
Okay, good morning, committee. Thanks for allowing me to speak to this today. I'm Tanya Alvarez, the coordinator for prevention. I just want to say that the idea here is that we have data that we're able to report back to the legislature on the effectiveness of the use of these funds. So the part that says outcome data would essentially just be data that would be like grades, attendance, behavior data. Wouldn't necessarily speak to the program. So if we did a report of intervention effectiveness, that would likely include the outcome data, as well as like a narrative about what the LEA is doing with those funds, and maybe other more qualitative measures like input from parents, input from students, things of that nature. So that's why we put both of those things in there, because we would want both the outcome data as well as that narrative from the LEA in order to report on the effectiveness of the use of these funds.
Thank you for that clarification. Director Rasmussen, I have you. We also have Assistant Superintendent of Student Learning, Darren Nielsen, Prevention Specialist, Tanya, that just addresses, and School Finance Director, Sam Uri, as the leads on this agenda item. Would any of you like to speak to this item?
If I may.
Yes, please.
So just to highlight where this rule is procedurally. So as you're looking at draft 2 of this rule, the language in black, the committee already approved, and it had actually gone to the board yesterday. But as a result of the legislative session, staff felt that it would be appropriate to include some new language for a requirement that the legislature implemented in HB 42. And so the new language is section 4, and a little bit above in blue. Anything that's in blue and red is a change in this draft. But you'll see that the big change deals with funding for increased enrollment of students learning English. And the legislature called out some specific requirements for rulemaking by the board with regards to this program. And so that's what we've been pretty minimal in just putting rules regarding specifically what the legislature called for. But we're happy to answer questions about that. We basically established some priorities for administering that program. But if you have questions about the program or how it would be distributed, I think staff would be happy to help with that.
Thank you, Director Rasmussen. Staff, are there any other individuals that want to comment on this?
Have.
Yes, please.
Yeah, it's a technical, just a minor change. On line, back to where we're at here, on line 50, we identify using the results of the WIDA access assessment. That access is typically, because the way that they name it is usually all caps. So I would recommend we change that, whether it's through this process or if we can do that.
Assistant Superintendent Nielsen, I can do that without a motion.
Okay, thank you.
And I personally prefer rules that are 74 lines long instead of, the ones in the 800s. So
I do too.
Director Rasmussen, thanks. But Member Bogus, do you have any comments?
I don't.
Yeah, going back to this line 44, this and here. I don't want to be selfish, but Scott, do I want more reports? No, of course I don't. And I hear what you're saying, so tell me, so the law has A through, what is the law? The law has this short list, but it says 4, right? It says you can use any one of these. But your staff is saying you're not feeling like you're getting the information necessary when each LEA chooses one of these.
Yeah, so Vice Chair, if I may, to address the question, the interpretation we have, and we're open to being told that's the wrong interpretation, is or means any of them or all of them, right? And so it was written specifically that way so that we could decide what best serves to evaluate, and you know what Tanya eloquently described, I'm not doing a very good job like she did, if what is the money making a difference for these kids or for these students, right? That by doing all of them, it does. Well, we'll see, but by not doing all of them, the risk is that we may not be able to gen out what differences the funding is making. And there was the feeling that this is beneficial too, along the lines of what had already been introduced in Finance Committee, which is that ROI type, you know, how to do it. Now, I don't want them to report anymore either, but at the same time, again, this is a lot of the reason why the rule was brought back in the first place. And I understand Ben's, you know, where we are procedurally as well, but my understanding is Royce is just using this as an opportunity to say his concerns about that portion of it, to see if you wanted to address that. Because, you know, we are in the blue, I get that. But that, you know, that is the long answer that board member Liller never likes, right? But, you know, Vice Chair, that's, you know, did I answer board member? It's up to you. I mean, it's fine. You know, we don't want to, we're trying to balance reporting requirements and things with being able to accurately attest to accuracy in funding, or you know what difference it's making. I understand it.
So let me try to understand a little better. The and is including the other data as requested by the superintendent. So
yes,
so it's saying,
all right, that's my understanding.
Right. So the and is if the superintendent doesn't feel like they have enough data, they may request more data, and it's in addition to what is already provided.
I think so. I would ask though that you check on that question with Ben and or
Tanya.
Okay, yeah.
She's doing the reporting on the at-risk.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's a great question for Ben and Tanya. Is it interpreted that way? And you know.
So we do have a comment from the public. So Mr. Van Tassel, yeah, go ahead.
The only part that the code has is an or, is to say either line 42, the LEA outcome data specific, or a report of intervention effectiveness. It has the and that you would have on 44, but what the legislature said was give us either 42 or 43. I don't want to, I just wanted to be clear on what the point I was making.
But this one,
it says all of the above. That's what the and on line 44 says, is all 4 of those.
So Vice Chair, did I say correctly? I mean, to me, we interpret it to being, it can be all or none. Well, some, it have to be some.
So you're interpreting that the and makes it so that you have to do B, C, D, and E.
Correct.
And the legislation is saying you can do B or C, but you don't need to do B, C, and D, and E.
But if I may, it's not saying that you can't do those.
Okay.
Right? And I think that's the decision point, is just, and the recommendation is that we do, if I understand Tanya's input and, well, Ben's from the policy side, is that's what we're seeking. Recommending, but ultimately it's a policy and it's up to you. So,
Chair Hymas, do you have any?
Chair, you've got a hand up on Zoom.
Okay, yeah. Whose hand is up?
Hi, Tanya Albornoz, Coordinator for Prevention. Just one quick clarification, if I may.
Please.
If we're to report on intervention effectiveness, that would be very difficult to do without data. And so I think our interpretation is we're going to give a report of intervention effectiveness utilizing the data that the LEA provides to us. So that was the interpretation, and that's why it was written that way. Does that make sense? I'm happy to answer any further questions about that.
I'm going to follow the lead of Chair Hymas on this matter.
No, so I see what's happening here, right? The legislature doesn't know what the USBE knows. They don't have the depth of knowledge, right? I get that. They don't want to disrupt things as they do as little as possible. So I'm conflicted here because, again, selfishly, I don't want another report, and I don't want to put another report on the LEAs. However, at the same time, I understand that the agency here is trying to improve things. And we need data to improve things and to see what's going on. And so that's where my conflict lies. I personally, go ahead.
Well, and I'm hearing what you're saying, and I agree. Like, we're eliminating red tape is I think always a good thing, but also there needs to be enough information. But how do we change this to read it so that it is, you know, hey, we need this or this or this. However, if superintendent sees fit to request more data, we leave that option open.
Chair, may I?
Yes, please.
Cammy, if you can show them the Google Doc, I drafted a potential motion that would alter this to reflect Mr. Van Tassel's interpretation of the code. This would make that an alternative. The language that's highlighted there would be something the committee could do. This is not, as you've heard, staff's preferred approach, but this would be implementing how Mr. Van Tassel has urged you to implement this particular portion. It would be to basically make B and C alternatives 1 and 2 under B. If that makes sense.
Yeah. See what you're saying.
I want to let board member Hymas make that motion if he thinks that achieves that goal.
Well, quite frankly, I'm not sure I'm there yet. And with just 3 of us here on this meeting, I'm inclined to push this to the full board so that I can gain understanding and kind of see, but it's just my thoughts.
I don't know. Yeah, board member Bogus.
So I would like to just make a motion that we put a pin in this until next month, because I won't vote to send this to the board.
Okay. Okay, the motion's been made. Let's vote.
Clarify your motion, Christina.
I would just move that we postpone this to the next finance committee meeting on May 2.
Can you,
Vice Chair.
okay, well, just, if I may, just for consideration, right? Can we see if the timeline, okay, so let's look at the timeline. So if we keep this in committee, it goes to your May committee. That would give the board June. If there's still questions on that, you don't meet in July. So is that a risk that we want to take? And is that a, you know, I mean, because we are going to end up run up against the funding requirement, or I'm sorry, the reporting requirement regardless. We have to report, right, on the efficacy, I think, of the program. So could we ask Tanya, I mean, is that, I mean, I'm all about slow as smooth as fast, but then I don't want to risk a timeline issue with reporting and being able to put out to the LEAs what it is we finally decide. So I don't know if they need to budget for it per se, but if we are going to report certain reports, they need to start that process at the beginning of the school year, I would think. So, but can we check in with Tanya on that?
Yeah, Tanya, would you tell us
And she would say,
Sure, Tanya Alberno's coordinator for prevention. I believe we put October 1st as the deadline for this report. So that does give you a little bit of time.
Yeah. Chair, Christina, can you help me understand what is it that you're, I mentioned that I'd like to take 30 days, have it come before the full board. What are your thoughts with having it go back to committee? What are you trying to clarify here?
Well, so I wouldn't vote for this the first or the second time as it's presently written. But there's typically, my motions would not make it through this committee. And there's only 3 of us. And so I think it needs to go through committee because even to have the discussion, we need to have at least 3 votes. And so maybe we move it to a special meeting so that we can have that out. But I'm not going to waste the committee's time with something that I don't know if I've articulated that well, Member Hymas.
So it's gonna go to next. I know, but regardless.
I mean, we can hash out all those things and I can make those motions before the full board, but that also puts us in a precarious situation in a full board meeting.
That's what I'm hearing right now with only 3 of us. If we're not unanimous, then it's gonna go without any action, right? And we need to move on this. So I think, in my opinion, if I'm hearing you correctly, Christina, you have some amendments that you'd like to make. You're not ready to send it to full board. So it really is, I mean, at any point, one of us controls it at any time. So moving it to, I'm inclined to agree with Member Bogus and move it to May.
Help me understand that then. We have a quorum of 3 members, right? You're saying we need all 3 members to vote to move it to the full board?
Yes.
So, all right. So let me restate your motion for us, if you don't mind, Member Bogus, one more time, and we'll vote on that motion.
So my motion at present is to postpone the discussion of the rule to the May finance meeting. I am happy, should it be the will of the 3 of us, to postpone it to a special meeting so that we can do both. But I think we need all 5 members of this committee here. Otherwise, I think we're spinning wheels like hamster.
Is Randy with us?
Do we have Randy on yet?
I don't believe so, sir.
I don't see him online.
Okay.
Let's, can we leave a date off? And then when Chair Davis comes back and Randy is back, and I mean, if we need to call a special meeting, she can make that call, and if not, it'll just fall naturally. And I can make sure it's on May. I don't want to, it's not gonna go beyond May, right? If I have control over it, I think I kind of do. So Christina, are you okay just tabling this for a future meeting?
Yes, that is fine with me.
Does that need to be a motion, or do we just?
I think that on the screen, Vice Chair Kelly, that our staff has reflected the conversation, and as the maker of the motion, I'm amenable to that language.
All right, let's vote.
So without objection.
And I vote aye as well. All right, let's move to our next agenda item. Is 1.6, minimum school program, local education agency legislative estimates. And our staff lead on that is Director Yuri and MSP Administrator Del Frost. Director Yuri, are you with us to lead out on this?
Yeah,
It's muted.
Sam, you're muted.
Still not.
Still no? Shoot.
There you go. That's now.
Yeah, Sam.
You can now?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay. Apologies. we've had a fun little baby boom here at USBE. So MSP Administrator Del Frost and his wife welcomed a new baby recently. So he's out on paternity for a little bit. But prior to that, he, myself, and Brett Baker, our MSP analysts, along with quite a few volunteer LEAs who we'd like to acknowledge their contributions, both from school districts and charter schools, put together. So we put together the legislative estimates, and what we do is use projections from the October Common Data Committee to look at the legislative budgetary actions and give LEAs their estimates for the coming year. So we put those together quicker than we've ever done since I've been here. The LEAs were great to give input and feedback, and we sent those out. So if we can pull up here the MSP program summary report, we won't go through the hundreds of pages all at once, but just want to kind of orient you to. So this summarizes by program all of the MSP programs. And so let's go, Cami, if we can go to page 100 of this document. And so what this does is shows all of the total allocated minimum school programs by LEA. So up here at the top is Alpine School District. They are being allocated a projected total of 106,996 weighted pupil units, a total dollar amount of $827 million. And so again, just these weighted pupil unit amounts, these are projections. These aren't actuals yet. We project their enrollments, we project their at-risk student counts, their economically disadvantaged and limited English proficiency counts. So I want to make sure that the board public understands that these are estimates at this point. They will change based on actual October 1 counts, both student counts and educator counts. But just wanted to point that out. So if you see there the amount, the $7.2 billion,
Rob's working on it, you know, just.
1.8 billion of that is local funds, and then the rest
Director
of that would
Yuri,
be-
I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir, but there's somebody who has a mic on. I don't know, or maybe it's the room. You're being interrupted about every 4 words.
Okay. Is that any better now? We can keep going here. So about 1.8 billion of this is local funds from property taxes that school districts collect, and then the rest is state funds. If we can go to page 15 of this document. So this is basically the single biggest line item here is grades 1 through 12. So again, just this shows the summary of each LEA, their projected weighted pupil units, and dollar amounts for each of these programs. What we use for what the LEAs look at, so if we can go to the district summaries document. So where that summary report has all of the LEAs, each program by program, this is one LEA, and then each program pertaining to that LEA. So for the districts, we're looking at Alpine School District here. We put the WPU value at the top, which, as we know, was increased by 4%. We put the estimated basic levy rate. We estimate their valuations and collections, and their voted and board rates. So just again, a lot of these are estimates, and we haven't even finalized fiscal year 25. So for the districts, there will still be changes to the voted and board local levy programs as we receive their final collections and those sorts of things. So I just want to give that context, but you can see here, if we scroll down just a little bit on the same page, each school district is receiving an estimate for their grades 1 through 12 WPUs, foreign exchange students as applicable. Let's go down to Beaver School District. So just one more page down. There we go. I just wanted to highlight that. So Beaver School District has necessarily existent small schools funding, whereas Alpine did not. And Beaver School District doesn't have any foreign exchange student funding this year, but their special ed programs are here, their CTE add-on, their at-risk add-on. And so these estimates are very, very important for LEAs as they set their budgets in the coming years. We do send out this calculation spreadsheets for every single one of these programs so the LEAs can look and see what data inputs were used. Of course, if they feel like they are going to have a few more students than we are projecting, they are welcome to, adjust and adopt their budget accordingly. But this is a very good starting point for them to see exactly how the formulas changed, the WPU values changed, and what things will look like. So let's go to any questions here. We will change this where it says less SB 37 basic levy revenues. We did make these before the governor vetoed Senate Bill 37. So normally that just says basic levy revenues. But any questions on what this looks like for a school district? And then we'll go look at a charter school. Okay. So we'll go to the charter summaries and we can use Ogden Prep here. They're right at the top. So again, grades 1 through 12, grades K through 12, charter students are weighted a little bit differently than district students, but they also receive WPUs there. Of note with the charter schools, that's a lot different than districts, is the charter school local replacement. That's under number 2 related to basic programs. So that, as you know, is the formula to replace local property tax revenue for charter schools. We also have the charter school base funding program. I want to, if we can just scroll down again on the same document. We'll go over these a little bit more, and the budget.
Referencing a page number earlier, is there a certain page number you're on right now?
Okay, right now we are just on the first page of the charter summaries document.
Oh, okay, all right.
So we had quite a number of formula changes and adjustments. As you know, the teacher salary supplement program ends this year and becomes a salary supplement for highly needed educators, or the SHINE program. So we have estimates there. Educator professional time didn't change much, it's still there. We do have the new school-based education support professional stipends, or those $1,000 stipends or bonuses for the classified employees. So those are here on our estimates. This is the first year. 35 million was appropriated last year for school fees revenue being replaced, and that's there on the bottom of the estimates. So quite a few moving parts and pieces, and we'll discuss in just here in a little bit how the professional staff program was eliminated, and most of that was put into the flexible allocation. But again, just very important for both charter schools and school districts to receive these, have them be as accurate as possible based on the projections that we made back in October, along with the Legislative Fiscal Analyst's Office and the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget. Any questions to this point? Okay, so we'll go to this last document, which was a late add to your packet. It's it's called, we just kind of did a year-over-year analysis. So I want to emphasize again that fiscal year 25 has not ended. So these are still estimates. Fiscal year 26 obviously has not happened yet. So we're comparing estimates to estimates. I realize, I think it's important to look at trends, and rather than fixate maybe on the exact numbers in these cases, but wanted to show you some of what occurred with transitioning professional staff to the flexible allocation. What that did was for LEAs that had more qualified and experienced staff, they may have quote unquote lost money in that context, but there are a lot of different moving pieces that go into this. So if we look at Alpine here on this first page, they're receiving a total basic school program increase of 3.6%. And some of that could be contributed to losing a little bit in the, so it's not always going to be a 1-to-1 4% increase. The WPU did increase 4%, but you have a lot of there's a lot of noise in this data, and I just wanted to kind of speak to some of the formula changes and let you know that it could be the LEA is changing populations a little bit. But overall, I mean, you have most LEAs going up around that 4% number. So let's go down scroll down to, so I just alphabetized these for ease of looking at. Let's scroll down to the next heading here. And if there are any particular districts or charter schools you'd like to look at, let us know. As you know, the voted and board program changed quite a bit with House Bill 2 in the last session. The hold harmless was moved from 6 years to 2 years, and they collapsed those increments. You will see here the 3 districts that aren't that are losing quite a bit. They're already not levying enough to receive state guarantee money there. So there is the hold harmless period for 3 years for LEAs that are not receiving as much state funding. So they will be held to at least the fiscal year 25 funding levels for fiscal year 26. Okay,
So-
let's go down. Yes.
Just for,
It's
I checked, but just for clarity here, I mean, we're looking at these, we have a dip as low as 30-ish% in some areas, and then there's what school is that? Salt Lake Academy High at 102%. So we're just seeing.
So, yeah, and sorry, Chair Hamas, so Salt Lake Academy is assuming that they are going to merge with Athos Academy. So there's a big enrollment change with that one. There are some expansions in there of charter schools that will show large increases. So again, there's a lot of noise in here. I kind of wanted to get the overall picture of the big formula changes and what they've done overall. But it's a hard story to tell with so many LEAs and so many formula adjustments. I kind of have been racking my brain of the best way to do that, but in that case, that's the reason is an enrollment change for that LEA.
It's pretty common then, except for Daggett. I don't know what's going on there, but it's pretty in North Summit. Pretty common to see fluctuations in charters. Maybe I'm just wrong. Never mind. Logan's growing. Washington is shrinking.
So Washington, this what we're looking at on the screen here is the voted and board program. they are not receiving state guaranteed funds in the voted and board program anyway. So these are local property tax revenues. Again, we don't have the finalized fiscal year 25 numbers yet. So these are estimates to fiscal year 26 estimates on this program in particular. The LEA has a lot of control over what they do with their property tax rates to look at this on this particular program. Yeah.
Sam, it's Scott. So when you mean we don't have it yet, what you mean is the final actual tax proceeds, right?
That's
See,
right.
this is-
Tax collections, correct.
All of this is important, but this is probably one of the main things in my experience that people struggle with, in the sense that when we begin a fiscal year, we are estimating what the tax proceeds will be, but won't know actually until the end of the year. And so there could be, this is why we try to emphasize that estimates are the driving definition behind things, because that's all we can do to start the year off and to try to estimate. Now, there will be true ups that occur, right, Sam, when we get those? And so these numbers could change. And I think that's frustrated people in the past, because then they go back and they look at, well, you said this back there, now you're saying this, right? Well, yes, because it's an estimate. It's, Sam has done really good. I counted, he said estimate 17 times. So good job, Sam. Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and voted and board is probably the biggest one that does do that changing.
Sam, we lost you. Sam.
Oh. What about now? Am I back yet?
No, it's your volume. Your volume just kind of faded out.
What about now?
There we go.
I think I accidentally muted myself, so sorry about that. Voted and board is the biggest program that changes right at the end of the year. We don't get the final collection data until this month, and then we reconcile what the counties provide us with what the district has received, make sure everyone agrees, and then make those final adjustments in May. So yes, these are still estimates. Let's go down to the next heading here, and we'll go through some of these other formula changes. So if you recall from the session, special education impact aid was reduced by 3.4 million. The brunt of that impact was borne on LEAs enrolling more than 1%. So the bigger LEAs see the biggest changes here in their impact aid funding. It's not a huge program in the context of things with special education, but we do see some LEAs here, the larger LEAs losing some funding in special education impact aid. We'll go down here, and the converse of that is some of the smaller LEAs will see slight increases. Okay, so necessarily existent small schools was the only program to receive new ongoing money outside of the educator salary adjustment and the WPU and all those statutory increases. But the only other program to receive new ongoing money was the necessarily existent small schools program. And so we have here the increases for those LEAs who qualify under and have necessarily existent small schools. Okay, let's go down one more. Okay, so again, this is the total MSP, and again, estimates to estimates, right? So we do see most of them going up here. There are a couple that show in the negative, and those are North and South Summit and Washington School District. That doesn't mean they're receiving less state funding. It just means our current projections and estimates show that if you combine their local funding, it would be a little bit less. They are still receiving more state funding, but again, there's a lot of noise here, so I just wanted to kind of point out those trends and things. But overall, you are seeing a spectrum here between kind of 5 and 9% on average. Again, a lot of noise in populations and tax collections and different things, but by and large, LEAs received increases in state funding across the board. So any questions? That's where we're at right now with our estimates.
Thank you, Director Yuri, for that information. Appreciate that. Any questions from Member Bogus?
No, I appreciate it though. Thank you.
And
And if any board member or public wants to see any of the spreadsheets, we didn't put them all in backup here because there are so many, but if there is a particular program you want to look at, I'm happy to send that to you. So.
Okay, appreciate that. All right, well, thank you. We'll move on in the agenda then and move to agenda item 1.7. State fiscal year 2026 public education budget review and recommendation for adoption. And our staff lead on this is Assistant Superintendent of Operations Deborah Jacobson, Deputy Superintendent of Operations Scott Jones. So, I think is she? Yeah. Assistant Superintendent Jacobson, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, good morning. We're excited to present the FY26 budget. Cami, if you can pull up the presentation here. So every year we will bring to you basically what happened in the legislative session and budget the new funding. This does not include the local funding, as Director Yuri had stated, is about $1.8 billion. And we also do not include the beginning and closing balances. In the appropriations, when they show up, those are basically, again, estimates. And we haven't closed out 25 yet, so we don't know what those actual funds are. And in this presentation, it also will not include USDB. USDB's budget will come separate to you later. This year, as you can see on the pie chart, the majority of our funding is state funding. With that, however, there are a total of 28 funding sources that we track here at USBE. 18 of those are restricted state funds. But there's a total of 25 state funds. Then, of course, we have our federal, and then there's 2 funding sources that come from other sources. Sorry, Cami, go ahead, move to the next. This year, this is a list of the new programs that have been added to our appropriations. There are a total of 14, and I apologize. I just noticed that there is one missing. So we'll get that added in time to go to the board meeting. And that would be the $200K one time for the telehealth, public ed telehealth. We do have staff on hand too, if you have any questions that are specific to these programs.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Yeah, please.
This third bullet point on the left, writing instruction and AI plagiarism, is this Scribble?
Yes.
It is? So.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Carry on. Excuse me.
Okay, so Chair, I have a question real fast.
Oh, was it muted?
I muted you.
Oh, okay. All right, let's go. Member Vargas, go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Superintendent Jacobson. I'm I'm curious to know in the 1.8 billion of property taxes, does that include bond revenues? It does not appear to, but I don't want to be presumptive in my math.
The appropriation for local funding?
You had mentioned that there was 1.8 billion dollars that was coming to fund education in the form of property taxes or local procurement, basically. And I was just wondering if that included the bond revenues or if that
No.
was exclusive.
Director Yuri can correct me if I'm wrong, but no, that is property tax that is collected.
Okay, I thought I heard you correctly. Thank you for the clarification.
Mhm. Okay, so the new programs equate to about $237 million in funding. It is a combination of one-time and ongoing funds that have been introduced. And this takes the entire agency to kind of go through. Program staff are actively working on some of these new programs to figure out how they fit into our system, if there's board rules that need to be put in place. So you'll be seeing a lot of that over the next couple of months to get those things in place. Cami, next slide. This is the long list of public education stabilization account funding. This is all 100% one-time funding that comes through. As you can see, there are some of the new programs are listed on here, like the Catalyst Center, the educator support, professional bonuses, and the English learner amendments. Next slide, Cami. Again, this just continues unless there's any questions. Okay, next slide. These are the notable changes that we see in our existing programs.
Yeah.
Sorry, did I hear a question?
No, Deborah, keep going. Sorry.
The noise or the feedback is pretty bad, so.
Sorry.
Okay, so these are the notable changes in existing programs. You'll see here in MSP, you'll see the 4% increase to the WPU with the new value going up to 4,674. The statutorily required enrollment growth. And as Director Yuri mentioned, the increase to the NEST formula. We did see a few decreases. These funds were talked about in PEA at the legislature, and then they were ultimately discontinued and reallocated. Next slide, Kemi. In the related to basic programs, you'll see that this year we weren't this year being FY25, we were not funded for the Grow Your Own Teacher program, but it will be coming back in 26. And then of course the money that was moved from the pro staff program now being in the flexible allocation. Next slide, Kemi. And then just a few changes. So student support services, if you remember, and the previous slide, there was some money that was reduced from the student health counseling. Part of that money was reallocated here as well. So student support services, they had taken the suicide prevention money and have now created its own individual program. So you'll see here that they're removing 500,000 from student health and counseling along with the money from student support services and now putting it in suicide prevention, creating a new program. And that was just to split it out so it's easily identifiable. The statewide online education, SOEP, There was a reduction there in order to create the new Utah private course choice empowerment. And then, of course, the increase to child nutrition program for the food safety or food security amendments. Sorry. Next slide, Kemi. Sorry. Educator licensing has received a new stipend program in the amount of 12.4. And Carson Smith was reduced by about 400,000. If you'll remember back in last session, this particular program is being phased out. And so there's not as much money needed here to cover what we are already obligated to cover. So they've reduced it by about 400,000. Next slide, Kemi. Of course, Utah Fits All was increased by 40 million, and then they've decreased it by 20 million one time. So the ongoing piece of Utah Fits All was increased by 40 million, but they decreased by 20 million one time for just 26. So the net increase, of course, for 26 year is the 20 million. Next slide, Kemi. Of course, the CPR training that was brought up during the session was actually reduced and eliminated. And then on the board's budget, that is the technical change that we had requested, funding that should have, when the line items had originally split a couple years ago, this funding should have moved with CTE and wasn't moved. So we asked the legislature to move that for us. And they honored that. Next slide, Kemi. So this is just a summary. When we build out the budget, this is a lot of meetings. We meet with every section. We talk about their personnel array. We talk about their needs, the things that we know about the new programs, and what their the intent language is with that. And then we build out our budget. So this is a summary by section of how they intend on spending the money. This will change throughout the year, especially as we find out more about the new programs. Again, this is an estimate on how we intend on spending it. We always set the personnel. We have some fixed costs that have to be set. And then we just work with the sections throughout the year. Next slide, Kemi. And just looking at the overall spending of the agency, again, as always, you can see that about 96% of this money is intended to go out to, it's all flow through to LEAs, CBOs, with the majority of that being MSP. So with that, are there any questions?
Board Member Bogus, do you have any questions?
Thank you, sir. I do not. Believe it or not, this is one of the things I understand the best.
Well, Assistant Superintendent Jacobson, you did a great job with this. This slideshow is great, so appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet.
So, recommended action on this, and I will move the Finance Committee recommends the Utah State Board of Education adopts the 2026 state fiscal year budget. Any discussion on that? Then let's vote.
Aye.
Aye.
I,
Is that an aye?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I saw Randy because I saw palm trees. And he's in LA, just.
Randy, are you on? Board Member Booth?
He got to this.
I think, can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you are.
Okay. It's just small on my phone, so I have to see what I'm pushing.
All right, well, we were hoping you'd come up on that screen. So we could.
service around here may be
That's good. It's good. I'm sorry, I'm back.
No worries. We were virtually hoping to join you on the beach. That's all.
Well, it's a beautiful day in Newport Beach. Let me tell you, it looks like summer. There are boats everywhere. My son-in-law is paddleboarding in his suit, standing up and paddling in the marina right here at Newport Beach. And I'm watching it from his office, where I'm in a conference room looking out on the marina. So it's pretty nice.
Awesome.
But it's good to get that update. Appreciate hearing what's happening with the finances for our.
Did you want to vote on that, on the motion?
Pardon me?
Did you want to vote on the motion? It was, the motion was the Finance Committee recommends the Utah State Board of Education adopts the 2026 state fiscal year budget.
Yes, I heard that and I said yes, but evidently you didn't hear me, but I do know how to unmute now, so I should be able to be more accessible.
Perfect. Well, that motion passes unanimously. So thank you, Board Member Booth. We'll move on to agenda item 1.8, Information School Children's Trust Quarterly Report. And our lead on this is School Children's Trust Director Paula Plant and Deputy Superintendent Jones. So, and we have Director Plant here in the boardroom with us. So we'll turn the time to you.
Thank you. So Cami, if you'll help me pull up the slides, I would appreciate that. I want to, so Paula Plant, I'm Director of the School Children's Trust here at the State Board of Education. I needed to be in the office today otherwise, so I'm happy to be able to join you in person. For those of you that are new to the committee, I think it might be helpful just to provide a little bit of background. There was a time when our section actually reported directly to you instead of the superintendency. And when some of those changes were made, there was a recommendation made that quarterly report. Well, for a little while, we reported to the audit committee. And then there was a recommendation made that we should be reporting to you directly through a committee. So that's the reason I do a quarterly report. If you'll go to the next slide, Ms. Cami. And so I thought to start out, it might be helpful, and as a new committee, you may have a different perspective, but the prior committee had asked me to make sure that in my reports, I explain to you how schools are spending the money. So sometimes we talk specifically, highlight a school or an area of focus, but I thought first I would just point out kind of the overall picture. When I prepared these slides, I didn't have access to the 2025 or 4 expenditure data. I do now, but when I had to have this in backup, 22 was most, not frequent, most recent.
Most recent.
Most recent I had, but I thought it might be interesting for you to see how the funding has changed over the years. Those first early years, the first year of the program, it was just $10 a student average, and they didn't spend a lot of money on people because they didn't have enough money. As you can see, it was on things that would help support classroom instruction. And you can see that now it's completely reversed. As you would expect in education, people are the largest expenditure and probably the most important. Now you can't see that one little gray piece, and I probably shouldn't even included it, but it's transportation. It's for things like field trips and that kind of thing, and it's very tiny. But to schools that use it for that purpose, it's pretty important to them.
So do you mind if I ask, when we were labeling this people, is that staff then?
It's anyone in when we do the categories, is anybody who gets paid. So it could be aides, it could be someone who comes in as to do a training, it could be anyone who falls into that category. Okay, so then if you'll go to the next slide, Cami, the next one, instead of showing how the expenditures, this one shows the areas of focus since the beginning of the program and to now. And initially, well, not initially, but over time, over the 25 years, has been a change in what was considered academic. So the law has always said that the schools need to identify their greatest academic need, but what is academic in board rule has changed over time. So you'll see, for instance, that physical education is on there, but wasn't initially. And there was some feeling that some things were and some things weren't. But of course it is included now, and now it's anything that is in the core standards. If it's in the core standards, is considered academic and is can be considered by a council to spend money there. You'll see college and career readiness, graduation rates, and financial literacy are all things that have been added in fairly recent years. And so that's the reason there wasn't an expenditure there. Also, it might be important to point out that most schools, so it would be secondary schools that choose college and career readiness or increasing graduation rates, they usually choose one or two other academic areas, sometimes three, because what they're finding is that students are deficient in science, or they're deficient, or they're needing help with math, so they'll be ready to graduate or be ready to assume, be ready for a career when they graduate. So hopefully that helps you to see a little bit how the schools are spending the money statewide. If you'll go to the next slide, Tammy, thank you. So in this report, I usually try to update you on what happened in the legislative session was specific to the trust. Some of those words are really tiny. I'm going to have to do better next time, sorry. So the first one is your direction to us to find a sponsor and run a bill to increase, to allow us to hire an additional FTE in our section. And so you supported that, and that bill passed. And so you also, the State Board of Education funding was helping to supplement the cost of the website. So the fiscal note on that bill covered both an FTE for us and to make sure that the trust is covering the cost of that website. It's part of the trust, and the trust should be assuming the responsibility for it. So that passed. And then, as all of you, that the bill that you'll recall had to do with sunsetting a bunch of programs. And we followed that one closely because the School on Trust is supposed to support the Teacher and Student Success Act. And so if that was going to change, it potentially could change what we're doing. And ultimately that went to a study that the State Board of Education was already engaged in study of all of their programs. This next one, HB 483, was kind of a challenge for us all the way through the session. It ultimately passed on the fifth substitute, and every substitute didn't have small changes, it had major changes. The initial bill actually removed the advocacy, all the language about the advocacy office. And the advocacy office was created about 7 years ago to make sure that there was an entity in the trust system that was watching out for the rights of the beneficiaries. So we have a land office taking care of the land, a fund office is taking care of the money. Someone needs to be watching out for the beneficiaries, and that's the reason that office was created. And a recent legislative audit that happened over the past year, one of the recommendations coming out of that indicated that certain things needed to happen for the advocacy office, or maybe they could just do away with it and send it back to us, to this office, to be advocates. But there was no fiscal note attached for us to do that. So that obviously would have been a challenge. When the advocacy office was created, and Scott can remember this, they actually took 2 people from our office there. And those were the 2 people that started the advocacy office. So it was going to take 2 people to do it there. It was going to take 2 people to do it here. So that was a concern for us. We worked on that and asked the sponsor if he wasn't willing to wait till a working group, and I'll show you that slide in a minute, that came out of the audit that is trying to address the issues that were identified in the audit, that we wait and let that working group finish their work before just eliminating the office altogether. The next item that was a concern to us, and I guess the reason it was a concern is that the land office was created to be an independent entity and to be able to do deals to the best ability free of political interference. This was the first time that a legislator brought to the legislature a deal for the legislature to become engaged in. Instead of it being done on what is the best for the beneficiaries, it was engaging political interference. And so that was a concern, a great concern to us. The details of that deal I can share with you, but I won't do it right now because it's a little bit complicated. But that was ultimately resolved, and that language came out of the bill. So it passed in a pretty good place. The last item, which is important, I think, for all of you to be aware of, is that this showed up right like one of the last meetings of the education appropriation, not education appropriation, the executive appropriations. It just came out on the list of appropriations for education. It was identified as an investment, a school investment. What it actually is, coming from the education stabilization account, so that is income tax money. It takes $50 million from the income tax money. It isn't going to SILA like this intent language says. It is actually going to a fund that was created the prior year in a House Bill 262 that creates a fund where the Department of Natural Resources can accumulate money and then ultimately purchase trust lands under certain circumstances. And so this is a concern for us because it's education money that ultimately will purchase school property and basically donate that land to the Department of Natural Resources. Since it's not a bill, this isn't something you can ask the governor to veto, but it's a concern for us. Okay, so the next slide. So when I spoke to you about this audit that happened at the entire trust system, and there were recommendations made about the advocacy office. We worked with the legislature to assemble a working group that could address it holistically. And those are the people who have been appointed, the chairs, both our legislators. They have been meeting and they will make their recommendation to the legislature in the October interim. It will certainly result in legislation that will go to the 26th legislative session. So just so that you're aware of that, and I will keep you updated on what their recommendations are. The 2 entities that represent beneficiaries on this study group are Cade Douglas. I think you probably all know Cade. He is the vice chair of the Trust Advisory Committee that advises this board on anything related to trust or school community council matters. So he's representing us there, and by so doing, reports back to that advisory committee monthly, so that all of the public education entities are staying up to date on what's happening. And then the other one is Carl MP for the Schools for the Deaf and Blind. You may or may not know that there is a separate trust for the Schools for the Deaf and one for the Schools for the Blind, as well as some other trust beneficiaries. And so he's representing the other trust beneficiaries in public education. The next slide then will talk to you just about a piece of corrective action that has come from some work that we have been doing over several years to try and make sure that the schools are spending what is being sent to them. For a while, we were seeing millions of dollars being held over, and both of you can understand that sometimes principals are concerned that they're not going to have funding next year, and maybe they ought to hang on to it. That's not what the legislature or the trust intended. Since there's an appropriation every year, it should be spent on those beneficiaries. So we've been working with the schools to try and make sure that they are spending below that 10% of carryover. And when the board adopted, I'm dyslexic, so I get this wrong every time. It's 114, right? It's the new rule. Okay, I keep wanting to say 441. It's 114. We tried to incorporate the process that was adopted there into this compliance process and corrective action. So the items that you see in green there are what a school does during the first year. So everything there is the first year for schools. They implement their plans, they implement the expenditures. And then ultimately there is a report created that comes from the School Land Trust website, because everything is there and can be queried. And we learn who is compliant and who is non-compliant. We send that then to the districts and the charter schools and let them know who's compliant, who isn't, and then give them an outline of how to become compliant. So then that's the second year, the blue that you're seeing there. Some schools may have had a large carryover, but in the current year plan, they're planning on spending that money and they're in good shape. They're not going to have a carryover at the end of the year. Some of them are not in good shape and they need to make an amendment and try to spend it down in this current year. And then when that report comes out the second time, then we let the districts and the charter schools know who's compliant, who's not. And then the result is that schools in a district that were non-compliant after the second year, that funding is reallocated to schools who are compliant. So the next slide, and for charter schools, it's kind of it's unified for all charter schools. As you can see, we're not really having the problem with charter schools. And we believe that is partly because a year ago, the legislature gave business administrators in charter schools the responsibility to do the secondary approval at a charter school level. And so those business administrators are very engaged and they know what a charter school is planning on spending and whether it's being spent or not. And so in this process, you can see this was the report that went out. We've had many of those schools submit amendments to try and spend the funding down. And then some of them, of course, were planning to spend it down already. There's also been some adjustments made where we didn't have correct data. But all of those 193 adjustments are not always for this. Sometimes it's for other reasons. But we believe that that when we get the numbers at the end of the second year, we're going to have very few schools that are non-compliant. So the next slide. This is just to update you on direction that the board gave us last fall, that we, through the Trust Advisory Committee, we are going to be reviewing, we're in the process, already have started this, to review the code and the rule and determine if we can make simplifications or clarity There has been some discussions about the size of councils. Do all schools need the same size of a council? There have been some discussions about financial issues, and also as a volunteer group. So maybe I'll just point to a recent internal audit. Was not that recent, it's about 4 years ago. That was done a process audit that determined school community councils and the program have more requirements than a federal program that was included in the same audit. So it's a lot. It's really a lot for a school and volunteer councils to try and take care of and be responsible for. So the question is, when we went to the School Boards Association, is do you need all of this to be able to approve a plan? What do you need to approve a plan? What do you think councils need to do to make sure that their communities know what they're doing? Do we need all of this? So that will be a discussion, and we will bring those recommendations to you. It will probably require some legislative changes. And I think this is the last one. Yeah. So if you have any questions, otherwise, that's my report.
Super.
Awesome. Thank you.
Member Booth or Member August, do you guys have any questions for Director Plant?
I think that was a great report. It's good to be up to speed on what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Just, I don't see pointers.
Thank you. I know.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. That takes us to agenda item 1.9 and the end of the agenda, but information, recognition of progress, achievements, or improvements. Deputy Superintendent of Operations, Scott Jones.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kelly. These are intended to ensure updates on two very important system projects, specifically the Utah Schools Information Management System and the Utah Grants system. There, if you recall, there was some discussion about, rather than going through each individual slide, that we provide a summary. And so we're going to try that out here today. The key is that we want to make sure that in the past, and the reason why we've had gone to more in-depth presentations is because board members didn't feel as informed as they should be on USIMS or Utah Grants, whether it be, accolades for one or both of the systems or criticism of them. They felt like, hey, can you show us what progress you're making, the things, and there has been great progress. Without, further discussion on this, if we could just recognize Katrina Brinkley for the USIMS update. She can just give you the summary page out of the backups and then take questions from there. So we're trying this, for the first time this year. Is Katrina on?
I am.
Go ahead. Give them the summary, Katrina.
All right. Good afternoon, board members. Katrina Brinkley, Chief Product Owner and Program Manager for Utah Schools Information Management System, or USIMS. I apologize for the 3 items in backup. We were trying to get to what right is, and in the future, we will just keep this full page so that you have reference as well as our summary page. But our summary page is here. Oh, sorry. Was I interrupting? No. Okay. And we just gave a quick summary of each domain and where they are at for their July 1st, 2025 definition of done. So we have our educator domain who has everything in progress or completed. They are currently working on course assignments and employment, as well as authorized user access, data reporting, and LEA specific licenses. If you can scroll down just a tiny bit. Thank you so much, Kemi. All right. And then finance has completed the planned API improvements. We're still improving as feedback comes in, but the planned ones are complete. And then the team is working on indirect cost carry forward calculations and managing financial accounts and combinations at our finance analysts or at our local agency level. And the student domain has a significant portion. They're obviously 2 teams instead of 1, so they have about double the backlog. They're complete with student attendance. They're in progress with statewide assessment results and managing API access to the student backpack. You'll hear us talk about some LEA access and how a secrets manager that we're currently working on, as well as student demographics. And then we have a few that are items that are not started. We're talking about whether we're going to get to those by July 1st or not this year. And we may have that update for you next month. And that is our quick summary for you.
Unmute down. Yeah. Member Booth or Member Bogus, do you have any questions?
Vice Chair Kelly, I do have a question regarding the student domain. So we've made a lot of progress. We're complete in student attendance and the functionality of getting that system working for us, but everything else is still in progress. How likely, particularly on the three areas that are in progress, that not the ones that have not been started, but how likely is it that by July you might be able to get the assessment results, the API access to the student backpack, and the demographics information completed?
It is highly likely. I'm going to apologize. My computer is acting like it's freezing, so I don't know if y'all can hear me. I'm hopeful.
I can hear you.
Perfect. So it is likely. We're actually working with the vendors right now to start testing the back and forth of that data. We just haven't completed all the pieces of that data yet. It is highly likely that those will be completed by July.
So could you or your person who has responsibility for student domain maybe give a little bit more information on the statewide assessment results package? What will that consist of when it's finished, and what will we have access to when it's finished?
Yes, so our goal for statewide assessments is to get each of the statewide assessment data criteria into USIM so that they can view it through their student backpack. So right now, it is the, where's Mark when I need him? Aspire Plus, Acadience, ACT, and I believe I'm missing one more. Let me see if I can go down to our full student domain. Yes, and RISE. I did forget RISE.
Right.
So that is it. Oh, I forgot Cami sharing. I was all scrolling in my stuff. Yes, so Cami, that is on the USIM student domain 2025 definition of done, student backpack, real student data slide. It's, gosh, probably 12. Nope, before that. One more.
Katrina, did we lose you? Are you there?
Yeah, I think we lost her.
Board Member Booth, I don't know, do you feel like that you got that question accurately answered?
Thank you. Yes. I just was wondering what was that going to include, and if it really was going to be ready this summer so that we've got access to that data as we're diving into figuring out what do we do with assessment and how do we do it more effectively.
Okay. Board Member Bogus, are you still with us?
I am, and I have no questions. I do have a concern though. That ACT and some of that other data, that's coming in, but we're not going out, correct?
I am back.
Welcome back. Did you hear Member Bogus's question?
I did hear Member Bogus's question. It is, can I clarify, what do you mean by going out?
So if I heard you correctly, basically we're setting up an API protocol and there's an interchange of data, but is the data coming in or is it reciprocal?
Yes, our goal is to bring it in. So currently it's coming in via our OneRoster rostering and assessment API. And our goal as USIMS is to push it out so that it is available in the SIS's student backpack, so that any parent or guardian can review that information as well as LEAs.
And in doing so, then we release that information to the SIS.
This is Jared, Vice Chair, if I may answer. I don't know if Katrina heard the response, but yes, so it'll go out to the LEAs to their student backpack. So we'll bring it in. If they transfer schools, it'll move to that school as well. I did want Katrina to clarify though. So when she says that the capability will be done in July, I think Katrina, if you could just let them know. I think the vendors still have work on their end to do for the student data backpack for parents and educators to access.
Yes, Jared, that is correct. And thank you for that reminder. While we have it available and they can pick it up, we will be testing with them. They obviously have their own development work that needs to be done to start receiving data from us. It hasn't been done this way before, so they are working on beginning that work. Some of our vendors are further along than others. We've had great success with those LEAs who run their own SISs. Sevier and Davis have already engaged with us and told us that they're able to receive information in a test environment. So yes, we will be testing this data first and ensuring that everybody's okay. It doesn't mean that it'll be in production as of July. It means that it's available there and we're working with the vendors to receive it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina. All right, we're going to move to agenda item 1.9.2, program monthly report on Utah grants. And grants manager Rebecca Nielsen is our staff lead on that.
Yeah, so I don't see Rebecca on there. Rebecca, are you on? Cami, do you see Rebecca? Over?
I don't, but I don't think she was planning on.
Yeah, no problem. I'll take it. So same process, Vice Chair and members of the committee. For the first time, you're seeing a summary of the Utah grants, much to the similar to what Katrina presented for the PMR/summary for USIMS. This is our first iteration or time you're seeing a summary for Utah grants. So I'll just, if you'll scroll down, Cami, through it so the public can see, the update. If there's any, so we'll just, if your direction, Vice Chair, if we just pause a minute, let people review it. And if there's any questions, I can try to answer those.
Board members, if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and jump in as you review that.
Why is it, Scott, that we, that's loaded already. Every time I talk about or see a grant come in, the feedback is, I hate Utah grants. Is this a common thing?
It's just, I think that hate might vary. So we really do try to make a concerted effort to address any concerns people have. The arguments go both ways, right? So we went to this system and it's a vendor provided platform. So how do you measure success of a system, right? Well, the system was to better manage grants, and most of them were both federal and state, but especially federal. Actually both. If you go back in time to 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and this is all documented and available for the public, we were paying back $1 million here, or reimbursing the federal government $1 million here, or the state, because there was question costs or unallowability. And everything pointed to the fact that it was all manually tracked, there was room for error, not trying to blame anybody or anything. So, you know, we took a system approach to it and we manage it. So the so what of it is, fast forward to where we are now, within the last 5 years, we've had clean single audits, we've had clean things, and, you know, I get it. It can be construed as burdensome. It hasn't made a difference, as superintendent mentioned, you know, to one of the committees and things, is, oh, it hasn't made a difference. Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard to know what you could do. All we know right now is we've avoided what we were experiencing 10 years ago by bringing this in. And are there shortfalls in it? Is there some aspects of it that are difficult to navigate? Yes, but we are it's not a done system. We are continually trying to update it. Rebecca Nelson has just been so phenomenal in trying to meet the needs of our customers while balancing compliance and management and control of funds. And I really do believe, and I would encourage anyone to check with our internal audit or external auditors, that what you see now compared to what you see 10 years ago, we have, the system has made that difference. Is it burdensome? Is it? Yes, but then we are really trying to balance, you know, reporting requirements and those aspects with managing what amounts to, you know, billions of dollars in a way that we mitigate against risk of inaccurate payments. No one knew about, last thing I'll say about this, no one knew about COVID, you know, when COVID hit, then all that ESSER money that came in was managed through this. And I think you all as board members and the public has heard, Utah stands out as one of the best, and I'm not perfect, but we're one of the best at managing those funds. And this system is what made a difference in it, to give our employees the capability to manage and control those funds. And it's that control piece that I know rubs people sometimes the wrong way. Hey, you got to redo your budget. Hey, you can fill this form out right, redo it. You know, I hate Utah grants. Yeah, but you do hear it. You do hear Utah grants. But at the same time, what would you hate more? Having to, you know, pay money back, or, you know, experiencing what other states are experiencing right now, which is questionable costs on what they use their ESSER funds for. I mean, we got questions too on it too, but okay, you know, we're always open. We're always open to. This was one of the first times that we really privatized, in a sense, or, you know, used a vendor as a system that wasn't built internally to do what I think we've been very successful at, is cost avoidance. So, no, sir.
I mean, it's a decent answer.
Okay. Well, I hate it. You know, the haters are gonna hate.
So I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay.
Negative. I
I know.
Bring a little negative.
Sure.
I think you're right, though. The frustrations are with those little things.
Yes.
That I'm hearing. But if you think of the overall, it's a positive.
Right.
It's an overall positive.
Yeah.
I am happy to hear that there's continual openness for feedback. Right.
Oh, right. Yes. I feel that way. Although there's, if I may continue, there's frustration about how long it takes, right? Hey, you know, we've been asking for this for 2 years. It's like, well, we have to do it through a vendor. We have to prioritize. There has to be the programming. We have to make sure we stay in budget. You know, there's all those factors that are doing. I mean, it would be a substantial loss if Rebecca ever, you know, found a job. So I have drones up above her all the time, you know, trying to see where she's at. So, you know, don't interview, please, you know, stay with us. It's not just her though. She's got staff to help, and the whole team. It really, I think you see, we're not completely sunk into reliance on one system, right? We rely heavily on the expertise and the human resources that we have, and they're all just great. That doesn't mean that we're immune to a mistake, or that we're immune to an error, or, you know, we own it and then we try to resolve it. We really do try to serve the LEAs the best we can while also balancing that compliance side. So, you know.
So Scott, is there a repository for the kinds of comments that we sometimes hear, that I hate the program?
Right.
What kind of, so if somebody says that to me, my answer would be, okay, well, what do you hate about it? And
Yes.
why do you hate it? And what can we do so that you don't hate it? It just seems like we get those kind of general things saying, this is like DEI is all over the state of Utah. Okay, great. Give me some specific example, so that we can really know what we're dealing with here. Because that, I know, because people are overburdened in a myriad of ways, that kind of becomes a default kind of conversation. I hate this, I hate that, this is not working, I wish we didn't have to do that. Okay, yeah, we all feel that way a lot of the time, given society and where we're at in life. But I would love to know what is the process whereby anything systemic that is a little bit too much of a hurdle or is clearly burdensome to a big district or whoever it is that's complaining. It would be great to be able to have a system that we are able to address those items one by one and check them off.
Yes, so Vice Chair, the answer to Board Member Bruce's question is yes, and that it flows through Rebecca. Rebecca has connections to all the LEAs and takes user feedback on, I wish you were here because she could tell. I'm not really sure how frequently they meet or, how often or how much input she gets. You would have to speak to that. But we do have an open channel so that, and I'm pretty sure all the users are aware that Rebecca is a thing, but, we can also make sure of that, remind people, hey, here's where you go if you have issues or you have concerns. In a way, we have our own help desk, so they can call if they're having trouble with a particular portion of it. There's, tickets that are entered, and then we work closely with the vendor to get those resolved. There's near-term issues, and then there's, of course, long-term issues. Hey, this, report format's wonky, or listen, Rebecca and her staff, which I think is a staff of maybe one or two, does track those and make sure that they're all aware of what's being worked on by the contractor, by REI, to program the system differently or better to try to solve those hateful issues. So
thank you.
Does that help, sir? Yeah. Okay. And sir, subject to any more questions, that's the last agenda item for this committee meeting. All right. Board Member Amos. Yeah, move to adjourn. Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay. We're adjourned. We are adjourned. Thanks for joining us, Board Member Bill.
Good to be here. And we start again at 1 o'clock with USDB, right?
Yes. Are you jumping back on?
Yep. I'll be back.
We hate to rob you from your trip. I know the recitals tonight, right? At 7?
Yep, that's right.
We'll be done by then, I hope.
We'll jump on that paddleboard.
Yeah.
I have full confidence in your ability to be done by 7. I was so shocked and amazed yesterday. I talked about it all night long. Fabulous. Good work.
Thank you. And like Cole said, go get on that paddleboard.
Okay.
It's easier to fall off a paddleboard than a skateboard, you can get back up.
You just take your suit off though. Make sure it's a swimsuit. Watch your tie.
All right, great. We'll see you in an hour. Bye-bye.